Thank you. My name is Marco Rubio. I'm from Florida. My wife, Jeanette, and I are the proud parent. We've been married 17 years, and we're the proud parents of 4 children, 2 of whom were able to join us here this evening. I'm honored to be here at the Reagan Library, at a place that honors the legacy of a man who inspired not just my interest in public service, but also our love for country. And I'm also aware of that California has a drought, and so that's why I made sure I brought my own water.
Senator Cruz? You've called Vladimir Putin a, quote, gangster. Why would President Rubio's approach be more effective than President Trump's?
Well, first of all, I have an understanding of exactly what it is Russia and Putin are doing, and it's pretty straightforward. He wants to reposition Russia once again as a geopolitical force. He himself said that the destruction of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Soviet Union, was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. And now he's trying to reverse that. He's trying to destroy NATO. And this is what this is a part of. He is exploiting a vacuum that this administration has left in the Middle East. Here's what you're going to see in the next few weeks. The Russians will begin to fly combat missions in that region, not just targeting ISIS, but in order to prop up Assad. He will also then turn to other countries in the region and say, America is no longer a reliable ally, Egypt. America is no longer a reliable ally, Saudi Arabia. Begin to rely on us. What he is doing is he is trying to replace us as the single most important power broker in the Middle East, and this president is allowing it. That is what is happening in the Middle East. That's what's happening with Russia.
Thank you, Senator. I want to bring in...
that he was going to conduct was going to be a pinprick. Well, the United States military was not built to conduct pinprick attacks. If the United States military is going to be engaged by a commander-in-chief, it should only be engaged in an endeavor to win. And we are not going to authorize use of force if you're not putting men and women in a position where they can win. And quite frankly, people don't trust this president as commander-in-chief because of that. Senator Paul.
I think this gets to the point of wisdom.
Language of our country, and everyone should learn to speak it. It's important. I want to tell you a story about someone that didn't speak English that well. It was my grandfather. He came to this country in the 1960s as escaping Cuba, and he lived with us growing up. And my grandfather loved America. He understood what was so special about this country. He loved Ronald Reagan. He'll be very proud of the fact that we're here this evening. My grandfather instilled in me the belief that I was blessed to live in the one society in all of human history where even I, the son of a bartender and a maid, could aspire to have anything and be anything that I was willing to work hard to achieve. But he taught me that in Spanish because it was the language he was most comfortable in. And he became a conservative even though he got his news in Spanish. And so I do give interviews in Spanish, and here's why. Because I believe that free enterprise and limited government is the best way to help people who are trying to achieve upward mobility. And if they get their news in Spanish, I want them to hear that directly from me, not from a translator at Univision.
Thank you, Senator Rubio. Senator Cruz. We'll come back to you in 1 second, sir. But Senator Rubio, I'm not sure exactly whose plan he's saying constitutes amnesty, but I know he has said it about your plan in the past, so I want to give you a chance to respond. Then Dr. Carson will come to you.
Okay. Well, let me say that legal immigration is not an issue I read about in the newspaper. Immigration, illegal immigration, all the good aspects of immigration, and all the negative ones as well, I live with. My family's immigrants. My neighbors are all immigrants. My in-laws are all immigrants. So I've seen every aspect of it. And I can tell you America doesn't have one immigration problem, it has 3. First, despite the fact that we are the most generous country in the history of the world on allowing people to come here legally, we have people still coming illegally. Second, we have a legal immigration system that no longer works. It primarily is built on the basis of whether or not you have a relative living here instead of merit. And third, we have 11 or 12 million people, many of whom have been here for longer than a decade, who are already here illegally. And we must deal with all 3 of these problems. We cannot deal with all 3 of these problems in one massive piece of legislation. I learned that. We tried it that way. Here's the way forward. First, we must secure our border, the physical border with a wall, absolutely, but we also need to have an entry-exit tracking system. 40% of the people who come here illegally come legally, and then they overstay the visa. We also need a mandatory E-Verify system. After we've done that, step 2 would be to modernize our legal immigration system. So you come to America on the basis of what you can contribute economically, not whether or not simply you have a relative living here. And after we've done those 2 things, I believe the American people will be very reasonable and responsible about what you do with someone who's been here and isn't a criminal. If you're a criminal, obviously you will not be able to stay.
Thank you, Senator. Dr. Carson, I want to give you 30 seconds.
In the Senate, but I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does, but then it's the following way. This is an important question. I think if you're running for president, these are important issues, because look around the world today. There is a lunatic in North Korea with dozens of nuclear weapons and a long-range rocket that can already hit the very place in which we stand tonight. The Chinese are rapidly expanding their military. They hack into our computers. They're building artificial islands in the South China Sea, the most important shipping lane in the world. A gangster in Moscow is not just threatening Europe, he's threatening to destroy and divide NATO. You have radical jihadists in dozens of countries across multiple continents, and they even recruit Americans using social media to try to attack us here at home. And now we've got this horrible deal with Iran where a radical Shia cleric with an apocalyptic vision of the future is also guaranteed to one day possess nuclear weapons and also a long-range rocket that can hit the United States. These are extraordinarily dangerous times that we live in. And the next president of the United States better be someone that understands these issues and has good judgment about them. Because the number one issue that a president will ever confront, and the most important obligation that the federal government has, is to keep this nation safe. And today, we are not doing that. We are eviscerating our military, and we have a president that is more respectful to the Ayatollah in Iran than he is to the Prime Minister of Israel.
Mr. Trump, Senator Rubio seemed to be suggesting that you don't know information.
No, I don't think he's suggesting that at all.
Are you, Senator Rubio?
I don't think he's
Well,
suggesting
that's why we have a debate. I think that we should have a deeper debate about these issues because there is no more important decision that a president will make.
But are you saying that you have the knowledge to be the president that Mr. Trump does not have?
Well, you should ask him questions in detail about the foreign policy issues our president will confront because you better be able to lead our country on the first day. Not 6 months from now, not a year from now. On the first day in office, our president could very well confront a national security crisis. You can't predict it. Sometimes you cannot control it. And it is the federal government does all kinds of things it's not supposed to be doing. It regulates bathrooms. It regulates schools that belong to local communities. But the one thing that the federal government must do, the one thing that only the federal government can do is keep us safe. And a president better be up to date on those issues on his first day in office or on her first day in office.
Mr. Trump. So he did invoke your absentee record in the Senate.
I'm proud to serve in the United States Senate. You know, when I ran 5 years ago, the entire leadership of my party in Washington lined up against me. But I'm glad I won, and I'm glad that I ran, because this country's headed in the wrong direction. And if we keep electing the same people, nothing is going to change. And you're right, I have missed some votes, and I'll tell you why, Mr. Trump. Because in my years in the Senate, I figured out very quickly that the political establishment in Washington, D.C., in both political parties, is completely out of touch with the lives of our people. You have millions of people in this country living paycheck to paycheck, and nothing's being done about it. We are about to leave our children with $18 trillion in debt, and they're about to raise the debt limit again. We have a world that grows increasingly dangerous, and we are eviscerating our military spending and signing deals with Iran. And if this thing continues, we are going to be the first Americans to leave our children worse off than ourselves. That's why I'm missing votes, because I am leaving the Senate. I'm not running for re-election, and I'm running for president because I know this. Unless we have the right president, we cannot make America fulfill its potential, but with the right person in office, the 21st century can be the greatest era that our nation has ever known.
Thank you, Senator Rubio. I want to turn now to Hugh Hewitt.
Thank you, Jake.
And I want to go even deeper in that direction, because I think the belief that somehow by retreating America makes the world safer has been disproven every single time it's ever been tried. Syria is a perfect example of it. The uprising in Syria was not started by the United States. It was started by the Syrian people. And I warned at the time, this was 3.5 years ago, I openly and repeatedly warned that if we did not find moderate elements on the ground that we could equip and arm, that void would be filled by radical jihadists. Well, the president didn't listen. The administration didn't follow through. And that's exactly what happened. That is why ISIS grew. That is why ISIS then came over the border from Syria and back into Iraq. What is happening in that region is the direct consequence of the inability to lead and of disengagement. And the more we disengage, the more airplanes from Moscow you're going to see flying out of Damascus and out of Syria.
Thank you,
as
Senator.
you asked earlier today.
Dr. Carson.
I haven't had an opportunity to weigh in.
Cannot be solved by intellect. They cannot. They require. What they need is they need an operating space. That's what Afghanistan was for Al Qaeda. It was a vacuum that they filled, and they created an operating space. That's why they had to be drawn out of there. That's why they had to be destroyed. It is the reason why ISIS has now grown as well. We allowed a vacuum to emerge in Syria. They used it as an operating space to grow. And today, they're not just in Iraq and Syria anymore. They're now in Libya conducting operations in the Sinai. They're now in Afghanistan trying to supplant the Taliban as the most powerful radical jihadist group on the ground there as well. You cannot allow radical jihadists to have an operating safe haven anywhere in the world.
Governor Huckabee.
Just today,
by definition, ignore the law. So you can pass all the gun laws in the world like the left wants. The criminals are going to ignore it because they are criminals. Here's the real issue. The real issue is not what are people using to commit violence, but why are they committing the violence? And here's the truth. because you cannot separate the social, moral well-being of your people from their economic and other well-being. You cannot separate it. You can't have a strong country without strong people. You cannot have strong people without strong values, and you cannot have strong values without strong families and the institutions in this country that defend and support those families. Well, and today we have a left-wing government under this president that is undermining all of the institutions in society that support the family and teach those values.
Senator Cruz, I wanted to go to you. You're a constitutional litigant. Are you afraid of the next step theory of what happens to Second Amendment rights?
I am not.
Which climate change the Reagan way.
Because we're not going to destroy our economy the way the left-wing government that we are under now wants to do.
I'm citing George Shultz.
Well, I don't. He may have lined up with their positions on this issue, but here's the bottom line. Every proposal they put forward are going to be proposals that will make it harder to do business in America, that will make it harder to create jobs in America. Single parents are already struggling across this country to provide for their families. Maybe a billionaire here in California can afford an increase in their utility rates, but a working family in Tampa, Florida, or anywhere across this country cannot afford it. So we are not going to destroy our economy. We are not going to make America a harder place to create jobs in order to pursue policies that will do absolutely nothing to change our economy, to change our climate, to change our weather, because America is a lot of things. The greatest country in the world, absolutely. But America is not a planet. And we're not even the largest carbon producer anymore. China is. And they're drilling a hole and digging anywhere in the world that they can get a hold of. So the bottom line is, I am not in favor of any policies that make America a skeptic. You know, you can measure the climate. You can measure it. That's not the issue we're discussing. Here's what I'm skeptical of. I'm skeptical of the decisions that the left wants us to make. Because I know the impact those are going to have, and they're all going to be on our economy. They will not do a thing to lower the rise of the sea. They will not do a thing to cure the drought here in California. But what they will do is they will make America a more expensive place to create jobs. And today, with millions of people watching this broadcast that are struggling paycheck to paycheck, that do not know how they're going to pay their bills at the end of this month, I am not in favor of anything that is going to make it harder for them to raise their family.
Thank you, Senator. I want to go to another question.
Rubio?
I'm sorry, Senator Rubio. I'm sorry.
I know we all look alike, right?
Just the senators.
The Rosa Parks, an everyday American that changed the course of history.
Senator Cruz.
Well, I wouldn't.
People in Florida upset at me over a joke I made about Florida State, but what the heck? I want my code name to be Gator.
Governor Ackley.
One of the things that made Ronald Reagan a great president is that he understood that America was a unique nation, unlike any other that had existed throughout human history. He knew it was founded on universal principles that were powerful: the dignity of all people, human rights, the rights of all to live in freedom and liberty and to choose their own path in life. He just didn't believe it. He acted on it. That's why bringing down communism was so important to him. If I'm honored with the opportunity to be president, I hope that our Air Force One will fly first and foremost to our allies in Israel, in South Korea, and Japan. They know we stand with them, that America can be counted on. It would also fly to China, not just to meet with our enemies, not just to meet with those adversaries of ours that are there, but also to meet with those that aspire to freedom and liberty within China. I would even invite them to our inauguration. We would also fly into Moscow and into Russia, and not just meet with the leaders of Russia, but also meet with those who aspire to freedom and liberty in Russia. And ultimately, I hope that my Air Force One, if I become president, will one day land in a free Cuba, where its people can choose their leaders and its own destiny.